Right now, let's have a chat to Andrew Bogut, who's, of course, former NBA champion, and Rogue Bogues is his podcast, and we wanted to get the Paul Murray live bump, which I hope has happened since our previous conversation. Andrew, lovely to see you, mate.
Happy Australia Day, mate.
Happy Australia Day. Now, is this a media room or is this a backdrop? Because is this like what NBA money gets you, a media room of the size you are currently in? Because I'm very jealous.
Nah, just a lounge room, mate. Just a lounge room. So just off the kitchen here. So
you see,
slumming it a bit, huh?
All the little look. I got caught with sleight of hand earlier in the show, so good that it's working for you. So the Australian Open, right? So the Australian Open goes out of its way to say, well, January 26th, not going to talk about it, not going to be part of it. Despite the fact that, of course, there's government money in it, every citizen goes through, national pride, Australian tennis pride. They used to, on Australia Day, announce statues. And when I say used to, I mean like 4 years ago, that was a day of particular focus. But they've made their decision that essentially the Australian Open was an Australia Day free zone. What did you think of it?
Well, that's where we're going, isn't it? I mean, it was popular, fashionable for the last 30 years, 4 or 5 years ago. It's not anymore for political reasons. And I mean, my whole thing is if people want to celebrate it, I've got no problem with it. If people don't want to celebrate it, I've got no problem with it. But trying to cancel other people's right to celebrate it,
correct.
It's not very inclusive.
Yeah, correct. And that's the thing is
there's no inclusion there.
Yeah, and that's the point, right? Which is, as opposed to free speech means, and this is the thing, the Invasion Day rallies is free speech. Can they do it? Of course. Are they allowed to do it? Absolutely. The question is where the media puts emphasis on things, what they decide to overcover, what they decide to pretend is the actual tenor of what happened today. And the thing with the Australian Open is that I believe that this is a deeply compromised tournament because it's got a lot of Chinese sponsorship money. It is essentially fighting against a whole series of forces in world sport that says dinky little Australia shouldn't have one of the 4 big tennis tournaments of the world. It should be going to Shanghai, it should be going to Beijing. So they try to pretend that this is the Grand Slam of Asia. But there's inconsistency. They want to have a political position on January 26th. They have a political position on Russian flags, but they have no political position about a missing Chinese tennis player.
It's funded by Chinese money. Melbourne's a city that's heavily entrenched in Chinese money, and that's fine. But then, like you said, don't be hypocritical. There's a lot of issues going on over there. Where do you draw the line? Do you start banning other flags? The famous US-Iraq war. If that's today, do you ban one of those flags? Do you Croatian-Serbian war back in the 90s? Do you ban one of those flags? Like, it's a slippery slope, and I just think, I'm all for it. If Russian people want to be proud of their nation and fly their flag, they have every right to. I think that's racism within itself. You stop in 1 or 2 countries because you've taken a side politically within a war. The Russian people of Australia have done nothing to me. Do I condone war, period? No, our family came from the Balkans in the 90s, and there's always 2 sides to war, and they're both bad, right? So it's standard for what's going on in the world today. It's the popular thing to do. And I just touched on Australia Day. My whole thing is anyone out there really celebrating Australia Day because of, the atrocities of the past? I find that very unlikely. I mean, maybe a small minority of morons are, but for the most part, I've got friends of mine that are naturalised Australians that aren't from Australia who see that day as a very special emotional day for them because it was the day they, got enshrined and got the citizenship. So I think most people, 99+% are doing it by having a barbecue and a beer and catching up with mates, and not what it's been made out to be as kind of Invasion Day. So if you want to celebrate it, you have my support. If you don't, you have my support. Just stop trying to cancel other people's joy.
Yeah, it's also a thing where, and again, we all know where this is going to go, right? I think, to be honest, COVID broke the back of how we were used to celebrating it, apart from all the politics, because it meant with everything being cancelled, you don't quite notice that only 60% comes back, or 75% or 80%, as opposed to the 100 and then going down to 80 or 70%. But also, again, as long as we have a national day, we have to have a national day, because we have an incredible country to be proud of. But amazingly today, the Sydney Morning Herald did some polling about the National Day, and they said should there be a national day? Of course, 8 out of 10 people say yes. 2%. 2% of people said we shouldn't even have a national day in Australia. 4% said maybe. So we're talking about 6% of people who live in Australia with all of the benefits of Australia, all the protections of Australia, who think something is so fundamentally wrong with Australia that there shouldn't even be recognition on the 13th of September that Australia is a great multicultural story.
Well, I'm of the opinion that if you change a date, it's going to mean nothing anyway. I think you change a date, it's just going to move a goalpost, and then that goalpost is going to want to get moved anyway. So I think the date change isn't going to accomplish much, So I just think this has become very political. It's very divisive for both sides. Like I said, I'm not Orthodox, right? If I know it's Christmas Orthodox and I've got Orthodox friends, I'll say, hey mate, Merry Christmas, have a great day. I don't celebrate it though, and then I get on with my life. Yeah. I'm not thinking about it twice. We've gone from that to I don't support that, so it shouldn't go ahead, or it's just bonkers to me, and I get on with my life supporting different things that I don't even know much about. It's just a respectful thing to do as a human being. Hey mate, happy Christmas, happy Easter. I know it's your religious holiday. I'm not that religion, but hey, have a great day. Not hard. Move on.
100%. Cairns Taipans, pride round in the NBL. The players say they don't want to do it. A whole bunch of the usuals go nuts. But I say good on the club, because the club turned around and said, no, sorry, if this is your reaction to some of our people exercising their free right, then screw the whole damn thing. I say that works. What do you reckon?
Look, this is a tough one. I kind of caught wind that there were a few players on the Cairns Taipans that were uncomfortable with wearing the Pride logo, and that's their decision. They have the right to support it or not support it. The problem was that I thought was the team's going to have to get their back, and I thought that the whole team would then have to do it, because we saw what happened with Manly, that you ostracise one or two guys are going to get smashed, and that's what happened, and the backlash is still there. People have different reasons, religious, whatnot. There's people on that team that are from different religious backgrounds, not just Christians. There's Islamic faith. There's all different nationalities on that team, and I guess the team thought we better support each other because of the backlash they were receiving. And I mean, I just don't understand the backlash of people not wanting to do this. It's sold as everyone must do it. Yeah. And this is what happens when you have two or three people that don't. It just causes absolute shockwaves, and the media's jumping all over. They love the division and the talking point of this, but I'm for freedom of choice on it. So if someone wants to support it, by all means. But this whole thing of it's just two or three players. I know for a fact there were more than that in the league that were kind of kind of against my beliefs for whatever reason. You can argue that that's separate. But they were too scared to not go ahead with it. And that's not just the Cairns Taipans. I know that for a fact.
Good man.
NBL Players Association is, where's the Players Association in this? Like they have a duty for even the minority. If the minority are not comfortable with it, the Players Association should be protecting them. And they kind of said, everyone's in full support. Well, that's impossible. No one's in full support of anything these days. There's always going to be someone, and that's a separate argument. So, it's disappointing seeing these things online and seeing those players targeted. Some people will say, what's a big deal? It's just a small rainbow. Well, to those people it is. And you need to respect their right. And if you're all about inclusivity and inclusion, that also is people's religious and their backgrounds about their beliefs. Whether they're right or wrong, that's their belief. All of a sudden, the inclusion hashtag again goes out of the window. If you don't support this, you are XYZ. That's not inclusion to me.
Bloody oath. Bogues is awesome, and he's on our show each and every week. You can get him at the Rogues Podcast.